Well, hello, greetings, good day, everyone. I've decided to do something unusual today. I've taken a drive to the Evergreen Cemetery of Los Angeles. I've been wanting to check out this grave for a while. Finally got around to it. William J Seymour, you should know this name from history. If you've heard of the Azusa Street revival in 1906 in downtown Los Angeles on Azusa Street, this is the guy who was at the center of it all. His tombstone says, "Our pastor, the Reverend William J Seymour." He was born May 2nd, 1870 in St. Mary Parish, Louisiana. He was the son of emancipated slaves. His father died after contracting an illness in the Civil War. So with many children in the family, it kind of fell on William to help support them. He grew up during heightened racism. This was the era of Jim Crow laws. He moved up north to Indianapolis, and it was there that he became a born-again Christian. He was raised Catholic, but he became a born-again Christian. He then moved to Cincinnati, where he worked as a waiter. While in Cincinnati, he contracted smallpox, which is quite often fatal. It didn't kill him, but it blinded him in his left eye. It left his face scarred. So from that day onward, he had a beard because he didn't want his scar tissue on his face to show. He blamed this smallpox outbreak to his reluctance to follow God immediately into the ministry. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what William Seymour said. So from Cincinnati, he moved to Houston, where he met several people like Charles Price Jones, Charles Harrison Mason, and the most important person that he met was Charles Parham. If you don't know who Charles Parham was, that guy was essentially the father of modern-day Pentecost. And William J. Seymour learned from him. He attended Parham's Bible school. However, they split later. More on Parham later. They parted company later on. He went to Los Angeles. William Seymour moved to Los Angeles on February 22nd, 1906. He was invited to preach at a holiness church. He was invited actually to pastor there. However, his first sermon was about the gifts of the Spirit and signs and miracles and wonders and tongues being for today. They didn't want to hear it. The pastor, Julia Hutchins, really didn't want to hear it. So they had him padlocked out. 2 days after arriving in Los Angeles, he was locked out of the church. So he had no home, he had no job. He was essentially homeless in Los Angeles until a very kind Christian man named Edward Lee saw his problem, and he took William Seymour into his house. While in Edward Lee's house, they had prayer meetings. They decided to go on a 10-day fast and seek the Lord to restore the gifts of the apostles. And they started to fast and pray. 3 days into the fast, they say that the Holy Spirit fell. Several people started speaking in tongues. They began to publish a newspaper, The Apostolic Faith. Well, that was later. The prayer meeting attracted neighbors, and it attracted a large crowd. Some 1,500 or 2,000 people were getting attracted to this house. William J. Seymour was preaching from the front porch. This is a house on Bonnie Bay Street. You can visit the house today. We're not going to go there. But there were so many people on that porch that the porch floor collapsed. So they said, you know, we got to find a bigger place. So they moved into 312 Azusa Street, which was an old abandoned Methodist church, which was being used as a stable for horses and livestock. So they met there. Anyway, the they were very noisy because they were shouting, they were praising God, they were speaking in other tongues. William J Seymour and everyone got the baptism of the Holy Spirit. This grew. They attracted the attention of the local newspapers, who the papers said such headlines as "Religious fanaticism causes wild scene," "Holy kickers carry on mad orgies." A lot of this stuff was ridiculous, but this is what the papers were saying. All-night meetings in Azusa Street church. Negroes and whites give themselves over to strange outbursts of zeal. See, that's another thing. William J Seymour was one of the first to really separate himself from Jim Crow laws, which were in the South but were affecting other parts of the nation. He believed that all men are equal before God and should worship in the same place. Well, this was new to that generation. Wives say they left husbands to follow the preacher. This is more headlines. Disgusting scenes at Azusa Street church. And the headlines went on and on and on. However, instead of killing the revival, the only thing that the press did was attract more attention to it. And they grew. People went out from the Azusa Street revival, which carried on night and day for over 3 years. It went out into, people were carrying the message that God is still alive and he still gives gifts today. They were carrying it to Africa. They were carrying it to South America. They carried it throughout the United States and Canada. There's hundreds of millions of Pentecostals and Pentecostal people in Pentecostal denominations today. But this is the guy who really essentially started it all. Charles Parham was the father of modern Pentecost, but William J Seymour is the one who it spread from his tiny church in Azusa Street to the world. Charles Parham, well, William Seymour separated himself from Parham because, well, Parham got into some weird and bizarre things. Parham believed in annihilationism, that the wicked don't spend eternity in hell. They're simply wiped out of existence because putting them in hell forever is not according to God's mercy. Parham was teaching that. William Seymour said, no way. Parham was teaching British Israelism, the idea that the people of Great Britain were and are the 10 lost tribes of Israel. He was teaching oneness. Charles Parham also got involved in an elaborate scam to raise money. Well, 2 elaborate scams, really. One was he partnered with this guy who was an alchemist, who was selling this elixir to manufacture gold. Parham was that desperate to raise money for his church and his Bible school. He also sold the scam that he was searching for the Ark of the Covenant in the Holy Land and he needed money for that. Anyway, enough about Charles Parham. William J Seymour separated himself from that. The church, however, didn't last long. After 3 years, it began to diminish in number. The message of Pentecost went out throughout the world, but the church itself, where it was birthed, began to, well, grow less and less significant. Finally, they closed their doors. The building was demolished decades ago, but the message of the full gospel went out throughout the whole earth. Which leads me to one last comment. Many of these early pioneers and later pioneers that came along in the 40s and 50s gave themselves over to some very, very strange and bizarre doctrines. William Branham, for example. Well, this is not about William Branham, but I mean, he was Pentecostal, but he got into some really strange doctrines about the manifestation of the sons of God. William Branham was also a racist and a separatist. He was a oneness person, didn't believe in the Trinity. Anyway, and he also had a big influence on Jim Jones in case you didn't know that. Jim Jones was an associate of William Branham. All I'm saying is, you know, I think about other other old-time revivalists and Pentecostals, many of whom had these horrible scandals and these doctrinal heresies following. I couldn't find anything like that. Excuse me. I couldn't find anything like that on William Seymour. I didn't see anything that that malign his character. I didn't find any personal moral or financial scandals about the man. He never got rich. You know, Charles Parham tried to get rich. William Branham was definitely rich. William Seymour, no, he died probably below the poverty line. He finally died on September 28th, 1922, after having 2 heart attacks in one day. His lovely wife, Jenny, was holding him in her arms when he died. She died several years later in 1936, but I believe William J Seymour was a man of integrity, a man of character. That's my opinion. And he did great service to the church. So here we are today, some, 100 years after his death. And, you know, the gospel is still as strong as ever. So rest in peace, Brother Seymour. I have high hopes of meeting you in heaven one day.